The story of the Mechoopda Indians begins long before the arrival of the Americans or the dispute over land and resources. For thousands of years, groups such as the Maidu, Yani, Wintun, Miwok, and hundreds of other tribes called the region now known as California home. The tribes lived off the resources that the land, streams, and rivers provided. They cultivated plants and devised medicines to cure illness. They lived lives rich in culture. Contact between the region's tribes led to systems of trade and intercultural traditions. Life began to change as the tribes came into increased contact with white American settlers. Gold seekers and fur trappers brought diseases such as smallpox, tuberculosis, pneumonia, typhoid, and cholera into the region, decimating tribal populations who lacked natural immunity to even influenza. By the mid-1850s, a significant portion of the Indian population had died from contact with these diseases. The loss of so many people, resources, and land led fractured tribes to band together for assistance and protection. Many worked for local ranchers in exchange for protection from hostile whites. One such rancher was General John Bidwell, founder of Chico. In 1849, having established a ranch near Chico Creek, Bidwell employed the Mechoopda Indians, a mostly Maidu band, to work and live on his land. The relationship between Bidwell and the Mechoopda remains a contested subject to this day.
I read a lot about him there. I read about how nice he was and how he gave to this and he gave to that and what a good man he was. That wasn't the impression he gave my dad.
John Bidwell was married in an Indian ceremony to a very young Indian girl who was the chief's daughter. And they had a daughter, Amanda, which is Thelma and my grandmother.
In his later years, Bidwell married Anna Kennedy and brought her from the East Coast to the ranch.
She did not allow us to have our language or our traditions or our culture, our ways, because she did not think that we could command more than one language.
I don't know if I was there at that time. I don't know what I would have done if I would have chose to leave and to say, the heck with you, I'm not living under your conditions and your rules, I don't care, I'm going. Or would I have stayed and taken what he had to offer, which would have been protection, but you had to live by his rules, so I don't know, that would have been a hard call. Truly don't know.
On September 18, 1853, the U.S. government entered into a treaty with the local tribes, including the Indians living on the Bidwell Ranch, guaranteeing the Indians reservations and economic aid. In 1863, the U.S. government moved many of the Indians in the area to the Round Valley Reservation at Covelo in Mendocino County, far from their native land. About 300 local Indians chose to remain. The entire Mechoopda village was relocated to Bidwell's ranch. Like many California rancherias, the population of the Mechoopda village proved to be a patchwork of surviving tribal groups rather than a cohesive cultural group. Nevertheless, the group had formed a true and lasting community through work, marriage, and friendship. Upon their deaths, The Bidwells willed portions of their land to the Mechoopda and left an additional 14 acres in trust for them through a Presbyterian church. The church was unable to afford the taxes and turned the land over to the Bureau of Indian Affairs in 1939.
I was born on the rancheria. My remembrance there is I lived in my granddad's house, and I lived there with my mother and my father and my brothers and my sisters.
With me as a child, I spent all my time with Grandma Mandy. I used to sit and watch them make their Indian baskets, her and Mechoopda.
I remember Aunt Mandy, when making the cornbread and acorn soup out in the backyard of the house there. Me and her grandson, Ed Wilson, used to go out and help her.
I remember very vividly always a garden. There was always a garden around the house where vegetables and different varieties were raised during the summer times. So we were very self-sufficient in that area on the rancheria.